So this week we have a very, very good matchup. Packers versus Vikings at Lambeau Field, NFC North battle. And once again, the biggest question is whether or not Jordan Love is going to play. It's now been about 3 weeks since he initially suffered his MCL sprain. And my prediction right now, based on what we've seen, based on Jordan Love being limited at practice last week and now this week as well, I am confident that Jordan Love is actually going to play in this game. First off, it seemed like he was close to playing the last game against the Tennessee Titans. But now that it's such a big game against a very, very good Brian Flores-led Vikings defense, I think the Packers are going to put Jordan Love out there. That's my prediction. Of course, it could be Malik Willis if for some reason Love isn't able to go. But I'm pretty sure that Jordan Love will be returning come Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. And I think this is going to be a game that is the toughest test for this Packers team this season, similar to the Eagles in week 1. But this Vikings team, through the first 3 weeks in the NFL season, of course, they're still one of the only remaining undefeated teams. And I think they're one of the most complete teams in the NFL on offense and defense, where they rank near the top of the league in both categories. And so first off, the talk around lots of just media right now is how good this Vikings defense has been in year 2 under Brian Flores. You look at their defensive statistics right now, 7th best scoring defense, they're 14th best in total yards, 6th best in yards per play. They are 4th best in EPA per play allowed. And I think when you look at total yards, teams have been down so much because of how good this offense have played. And so they've had to, I think there's been a lot of garbage time yards. But this defense, 7th best scoring, 4th in EPA per play allowed. And this is a different defense than last year because of some additions the Vikings made here. One of the biggest additions was edge rusher Jonathan Greenard, who is 4th in pressures. You got edge rusher Andrew Van Ginkel. You also got Stephon Gilmore coming in at corner. And so this is a much improved defense from last year in the first year with Brian Flores. And so when we're looking at this matchup, when the Packers are making their decision between Malik Willis and Jordan Love, I think there are a lot of different things that they have to factor in. And one of the biggest things is when you look at the way that Brian Flores calls his defenses. He gives tons of exotic looks. He's one of the defensive coordinators who likes to blitz the most in the NFL. We look at how much they've blitzed so far this season. They have the 3rd highest blitz rate in the NFL at 38.6%. And I don't know if you guys saw that clip from Brock Purdy after the 49ers faced the Minnesota Vikings. Brock Purdy goes up to Brian Flores and told him that his scheme is insane. And so clearly what Brian Flores has been doing in these first few weeks with this Vikings defense have been working. And when you hold CJ Stroud and the Texans, who I think are one of the better offenses in the league, to 7 points, I think that shows you just how dominant they have been. And so that's why I think this week it's very important for Jordan Love to come back. I think that Malik Willis has done a very, very good job in the opportunities that he had the past 2 weeks against the Colts and the Titans. I think that when you look at when Jordan Love got injured, it was, if you're going to get injured, it was the best possible time to get injured, just because I don't think the Colts and Titans are very good teams overall. I do think the Titans' defense is pretty solid. We do have to remember, coming into last week's game, the Titans were the best in the league on defense at yards allowed and best in yards per play allowed, and the Packers still were able to move the ball pretty consistently. But the biggest reason I think that, if Love is healthy, of course, which I feel like he's going to be healthy enough for the Packers to put him out there, Jordan Love does have experience against this Brian Flores defense from last season. The first meeting, it didn't go too well for Jordan Love, and that was early in the season when he was still getting a hang of things. The Packers offense was still trying to figure it out with the rookies and all that kind of stuff. And as we know, as the season progressed, they got better and better. But we need to look at the last time that Jordan Love faced Brian Flores. It was week 17 last year. Here's Jordan Love's statistics. 24 of 33, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 125.3 rating. And as I already mentioned, Flores loves to bring the blitz. He loves to try to confuse opposing quarterbacks and disguise his coverages and, use safeties, sometime dropping in at corner. Tons of just crazy stuff, which confused Brock Purdy, it seemed a little bit. He still played pretty good overall. But CJ Stroud, that offense, they looked bad last week. But Jordan Love against the blitz in week 17, these stats are from PFF. He was blitzed 25 times by Brian Flores. Love went 18 for 25, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions when blitzed. And so Love has already dominated this Brian Flores defense. As I said, there are different pieces. I do think it's much better. I think it will be more difficult. But I think that with Love's experience, not only more games started than Malik Willis, but also his experience against Brian Flores. Obviously, if he's healthy, I think you have to put him out there just because of the experience he has and his ability to dissect this specific defense as he did last time. Now, could Malik Willis do that if needed? I think it's possible because I think so far, Malik Willis has surpassed my expectations in what he's been able to do with this Packers team. And, when you look at the fact that he hasn't turned the ball over, he's been playing really, really well. That first game, the plan was mainly run the ball. The next game against the Titans, the run wasn't really working as well early in the game, especially, inside with some of the size they have there with like Justin Simmons. And Malik Willis had to pass the ball a lot more, and he was pretty efficient, had some big third down conversions. So I wouldn't say Malik Willis can't do it. I would just say based on his inexperience, I think it'll be much harder for him to have success against this Brian Flores defense as opposed to Jordan Love. The one question that does come up is when you look at Jordan Love, he's obviously coming back from an MCL sprain. And I was watching a Matt LaFleur press conference. One of the reporters asked if they would maybe be hesitant with putting Jordan Love out there just because of how aggressive the Brian Flores defense is and all the blitzes they bring and lots of things like that. And, LaFleur was saying that is somewhat concerning, basically was what he was saying. But I think that if Love is healthy, you put him out there. And part of me even wonders if Malik Willis hadn't have played as well as he did against the Colts, if maybe the Packers would have put Jordan Love out there last week, and maybe they didn't just because of how good Malik Willis looked and they felt confident against that Titans team with Willis. Just some speculation, but I feel like Love will be ready, as I've said multiple times already in this video. But when we look at the Vikings and their pass rush so far this season, they have been one of the better pass rushes, 8th highest pressure percentage at 38.6%. They're 5th in run stop win rate, 20th in pass rush win rate, but they are 1st in sacks at 16 and 5th in sack percentage at 11%. Those stats are from NFL Pro. Some are from PFF as well. So they're a top 10 unit when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. Luckily for Jordan Love and his safety back there coming off an MCL sprain, the Packers offensive line has still been a top 10 unit when it comes to pass blocking in the NFL. Right now, the Packers are 10th best in pressure percentage allowed at 28.7%. They're 9th best in sacks allowed at only 5. And this is while being blitzed at the 6th highest rate in the NFL at 35.6%. And as I brought up earlier, Brian Flores loves to blitz, loves to disguise things, confuse quarterbacks, and he blitzes at 38.6% so far this season. The Packers have faced the blitz at 35.6%. So the Packers are already pretty experienced when it comes to facing the blitz. One difference with this Brian Flores defense is they like to play cover 0 a lot at 10%, which is among the highest in the NFL. And so they'll just bring some all-out pressure sometimes. And so you do wonder with Jordan Love's MCL, how mobile is he right now? Will he be able to escape the pocket and break away and things like that when the pressure comes? And if he can't, that is concerning. And maybe that's one reason the Packers would decide to sit him here if they don't think he's able. And so that just comes down to, the medical staff, the coaches. I would say right now they probably have a pretty good idea of how mobile Jordan Love actually is and what they think he can do on Sunday. We as fans don't really have a great idea besides what they tell us. And when it comes to talking with the media, obviously you don't want to give away all your information. And so the Packers probably know what Jordan Love can handle on Sunday. We don't. If he can handle it, you clearly put him out there. If you don't think he can, and you think that it's better to put Malik out there because he can escape the pocket, he can scramble, he played pretty good the past couple weeks, maybe you do that. And so that's just the uncertainty we have here with Jordan Love and his MCL. And one other thing, when we look at the talk this week, I've seen a ton of talk about Brian Flores, and rightly so, because when you, as I said, do what they did to CJ Stroud in that Texans offense, he deserves a ton of credit for what he's done. But I also think we have to give LaFleur a ton of credit, which he has also gotten. I think both have gotten the right amount of credit so far. But in this matchup, LaFleur was, especially against the Colts, he was scheming up some insane runs and rushing for 200 plus yards in the first half. And so coming into this game, this is going to be a very interesting matchup to watch because you have the Packers coming in as the best rushing offense in the NFL. First in rush yards per game at 204, led, of course, by Josh Jacobs. The Packers are also second in rush yards per play at 5.5, and they are tied for most rushes in the NFL of 10-plus yards at 19 total with the Baltimore Ravens. So they have been very, very good. The Vikings' run defense, however, is also one of the best. Second best in rush yards allowed per game at 71.3, third in rush yards per play allowed at 3.6, third best EPA per rush, and they are the best in rush yards before contact allowed per carry at 0.22 yards. So their defensive line has been feasting against the run. The Packers' rushing attack has been the best, and so it's going to be fun to see how this one goes, who's going to have the better hand, because they've both played really, really well. And so it's going to be one of the more interesting matchups to watch here. And I'm curious to see, what LaFleur brings. He knows what Brian Flores likes to do. But even if you know what he likes to do, it's tough for, quarterbacks, especially a young quarterback like Malik Willis, if you were to start to try to dissect and read the defense before the snap. I was watching CJ Stroud press conference, and I'm pretty sure it was Stroud, where he talked about just the confusion that, it brings with Brian Flores, pre-snap. It's hard to tell exactly what the Vikings are going to do, and so that's what it puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. That's why I think Love should be out there, because he obviously has more experience. And one question here before I get to the Vikings offense, Aaron Jones, all that, him coming back to Lambeau Field. I think it was either after the Colts game, I saw some comments saying, because of how good Malik Willis has played, should the Packers try to, even if Jordan Love plays, try to bring Malik in for some plays there because of his talent, his ability to run the ball. That's an interesting idea. Would Matt LaFleur actually be willing to do that? Maybe bring Malik in for a series, do some more runs, try to, throw off the Vikings defense. I don't know if he actually would. It's an interesting thing, though, to watch, though. Would he do it this week? Who knows? But I thought that could be, that would be interesting. You could say that at least. And then one final thing here. One area the Packers have really struggled on offense has been in the red zone, where they're 29th in red zone conversion percentage at 30%, while being 8th best on third downs at 42.86%, converting at that rate. And so the Packers defense has not been good in the red zone for whatever reason. They weren't great last year in the red zone either. Maybe that'll improve with Jordan Love, but that's something to watch. The Vikings, on the other hand, have been a top 10 red zone defense, 7th best in the NFL. So at least so far in the season, the Vikings have the upper hand when it comes to, how they've been performing in the red zone. And I think that just when you look at this Packers offense and their offensive statistics, most of it, 2 of the 3 games have been with Malik Willis. And if you would have told me coming into the season that the Packers offense would have these stats, but 2 of the 3 games have been Malik Willis, I would have been shocked. 7th in points per game, 5th in yards per game, 2nd in yards per play, and 10th in EPA per play. So the Packers offense has played great. Vikings defense has played great. And of course, the biggest question is Jordan Love, and will he play? So this is going to be a very, very fun matchup in that regard. Now to the other side of the ball. Probably the biggest storyline here this week is the fact that Aaron Jones is coming back to Lambeau Field. I shared his what he wrote in the Player Tribune. You may have read it. I shared some of it on the channel here. Aaron Jones saying that he may not have a G on his helmet, but he still has a G in his heart. So it's going to be sad, honestly, to see him out there wearing a Vikings uniform. And of all teams to go to, I wish it wouldn't have been the Vikings, because I want to see Aaron Jones be successful. Not this week, however. Clearly, when he's playing the Packers, I will not be rooting for Aaron Jones this week. But he's a great player. He's still been a great player in this season after moving on from the Packers. And if we take a look at Aaron Jones in where he ranks so far this year among other running backs in the NFL, he is 7th in the NFL in yards per carry at 5.4 yards per carry. He has 42 attempts for 228 yards, and he is 2nd in rush yards after contact per attempt at 4.7. So he does not look like he has declined at all, and I think we saw still how good he was to end last season, and the Packers moved on, I think, because of his age, his injury history. They wanted to move to a younger back in Josh Jacobs. But so far, Aaron Jones has played really well with this Vikings offense, and I do wonder if the Packers' run defense will be able to stop Aaron Jones this week. Because all in all this year, the Packers' run defense hasn't been that great on a per-play basis. 25th in rush yards allowed per play and 23rd in EPA per rush allowed. They are 10th in rush yards allowed per game, but I think that especially last week, the Titans had to abandon the run pretty early just because the Packers get a pick six. They're up by a lot. You can't run the ball a ton when you're down. So I think that's a big factor. So if this game is close, I would expect the Vikings to try to run the ball a ton just because the Packers haven't been that good at stopping it yet. They were pretty good last week, but the Titans only ran the ball 11 times at 3 yards per carry. So it was a good showing last week. The first 2 weeks, not as great on a per play basis. And now I think moving on to the biggest difference about this Vikings team this season is the fact that, Sam Darnold is the guy leading this Vikings offense. And so far, I've been pretty shocked at what Sam Darnold has been able to do because in his prior stops, with the Jets, with the Panthers, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. He comes here to Minnesota. Of course, you got Justin Jefferson. You got Kevin O'Connell, great play caller. And all of a sudden, Sam Darnold has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's 5th in passer rating if you look at quarterbacks who at least have 10 attempts. He's 5th in completion percentage over expected, and that's for quarterbacks who have at least started 3 games. And so in these 3 games, 657 yards, 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and a 117.3 passer rating, which has led to the Vikings offense being 3rd in points per game at 28.6 per game, 12th in yards per game at 329.7, 6th in yards per play at 6, and 8th in EPA per play. So it's one of the best offenses in the NFL led by Sam Darnold, and this is going to be a much tougher task than the past 2 weeks have been for the Packers defense. And that's why I'm wondering, how this defense, when it comes to the level of this Packers defense with Jeff Hafley, it's been great the past 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong. And I think what the Packers did against the Titans was very promising. 8 sacks, intercepting Will Levis a ton, getting a pick 6. But these past 2 games have been against quarterbacks who have been pretty prone to turning the ball over. I do think part of that could be because of how good this Packers defense is at forcing turnovers. But this is a much tougher task than the Titans offense, who have been one of the worst in the NFL. And I already read you all those stats there. But the Packers' defensive stats so far this season, 12th best scoring defense at 19.3 allowed per game, 20th in yards allowed per game at 328.3, 20th in yards per play allowed, and then 9th in EPA, which is expected points added per play allowed. So they've been a pretty solid defense. And of course, the biggest difference from last year to this year with moving from Joe Barry to Jeff Hafley so far has been the turnovers the Packers have forced. The most interceptions in the league, most turnovers forced in the NFL. Xavier McKinney with 3 interceptions, Jair with 2, Evan Williams and Eric Wilson with 2. But Sam Darnold, he has been pretty clean with the ball so far this year. He has not really had as many turnover-worthy plays as guys like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. Hopefully that changes this week. But if we look at the Vikings offense, their biggest weakness is their offensive line. Their offensive line right now is 28th in pressure percentage allowed at 40%, so one of the worst in the league. They have the 13th most sacks allowed at 9. And I was watching the Vikings-Texans game earlier this morning, and Sam Darnold was under pressure a lot. And you would think with an offensive line like that, you wouldn't be able to have the third best scoring offense in the NFL. And I think the reason they've still had success is because of how good Sam Darnold has been when under pressure. He doesn't really get flustered in the pocket, and he's been really good at, maneuvering in the pocket, escaping from pressures, and making some really, really good throws even when he's getting pressure. When guys are about to hit him, he's played really well, and that's why they've had that success. But I do think the Packers' defensive line, they have a chance to have another big day here because of how weak the Vikings O-line has been. And we look at the Packers right now, their pass rush, it really exploded last week. The first 2 weeks, a lot of it was about containing, Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson. It felt like last week against Will Levis, the Packers sort of unleashed their offensive line a little bit more, where they had 8 sacks, which is 8 of their total 11 so far this season. And right now, when we look at the Packers' overall pass rushing statistics, 14th best pressure percentage at 33.6%, 7th in sacks with 11. As I said, 8 of those came last week. And then they are 9th in sack percentage at 9%. And when we look at Jeff Hafley, one of the biggest talking points with him coming in was that it would be a much more aggressive style defense. And it honestly has been in the ways that Jeff Hafley has utilized some of these players. When you look at the overall blitz percentage from Jeff Hafley, it hasn't been super high overall among the rest of the NFL. According to NFL Pro, Jeff Hafley and the Packers defense are 28th in blitz percentage rate at 16.4%. But when they do blitz, they have the third highest pressure rate in the NFL at 55%. So basically, they don't blitz a ton, but when they do, it seems pretty calculated. And when they do it, it works at some of the highest rates, third highest rate in the entire NFL. And I don't know if you guys saw some of those plays last week where there's some interesting plays where Jeff Hafley brings up, he has Rashawn Gary on one side, Preston Smith on the other, and then he brings in Lucas Van Ness and JJ Enagbare on the interior, and then blitzes Edgerrin Cooper as well, and that seemed to work a lot. And I think to have JJ Enagbare out there as much as possible is a good strategy, because honestly, last week, JJ Enagbare was the most, he caught my attention the most out of any Packers pass rusher. He caught my attention more than Rashawn Gary, more than Preston Smith. He was just going crazy last week. And so it's good to see his ascent so far this year. It's been incredible to watch how good he's played. And I am curious to see, when it comes to this offensive line, can the Packers finally get to, force Sam Darnold to make some bad throws, throw some more turnover-worthy plays because of the pressure coming on Sunday. So that's going to be a very good matchup to watch here this week. And then one of the biggest things, too, of course, is trying to contain Justin Jefferson, which it's not like I expect the Packers to contain him fully. I know when Joe Barry was here, we had that one season. I don't know if it was 2023 or 2022, but the first game, Justin Jefferson comes in. Maybe it was 2021. I get it mixed up over the years. But Jefferson has a massive game in the first game. He was like 180 or so yards receiving. The next game, later in the season, Jair came in and was sort of one-on-one with him and shadowed him, and Justin Jefferson did not have a big day. And I'm curious to see, how Jeff Hafley tries to stop Justin Jefferson this week. And I was reading an interesting article from Forbes.com written by Rob Rochelle on Forbes.com, and he shared this quote from Xavier McKinney. Must have been in the past couple of days, but it was just recently posted onto their website a little bit earlier today from Rob Rochelle, as I said. But here's a quote from Xavier McKinney. "You can never stop guys like that," speaking on Justin Jefferson. "You can always just try to contain them. Obviously, he's going to always have big plays, but for us, it's to challenge him as much as possible. Obviously, we've got our guys over here that we believe in." Then he says, "We believe in Ja. Ja's going to be on him all game. So we believe in him, and we believe in the system that Haf has put into place for us." Speaking of Jeff Hafley. "For us, we look to go out there and execute, play hard, and challenge their best guys." So according to this report here, sharing from Xavier McKinney, it sounds like Jair is going to be on Justin Jefferson the whole game, which I think is what you would want when you have, one of the highest paid corners in the NFL in Jair. And last week had a massive game with that pick six. And so it's going to be that's always a good matchup to watch, Jair versus Justin Jefferson. We'll see how it goes. I don't expect him to shut him down just because Justin Jefferson is so talented, and especially in this Kevin O'Connell offense with Sam Darnold balling out recently, it's going to be even harder. And when we look back to Jair week 1, he didn't play great against A.J. Brown against the Eagles. You do have to factor in that field surface, which, guys were slipping all the time. And so I think that was part of it. But it wasn't a great game for him in week 1. He has bounced back, I think, the past couple weeks. So that's going to be, of course, a massive matchup to watch. And now if we look at, situational play here so far this season, the Packers defense has been one of the best on third down, 6th best third down defense in the NFL, allowing conversions at 28.13% of the time. The Vikings offense, on the other hand, they've been pretty good when it comes to their third down conversion. If we look at how often they convert their third downs, They are currently third best at third down conversions. And so that's going to be a fun one to watch. Lots of matchups in this game. You have, one of the best going against one of the best. So something's got to break here. The Vikings are 7th best in red zone conversion percentage at 70%. Well, the Packers defense has not been as good in the red zone. They're 21st in red zone defense. So that's one where the Vikings might have a little bit of a leg up. And I think all in all, as most games come down to, it comes down to turnover margin. Can you win the turnover margin, the turnover battle? The past 2 weeks, the Packers have been +5 in turnover margin. They were +2 versus the Colts, +3 versus the Titans. And so whether it's Jordan Love or Malik Willis, it always comes down to, playing clean football, not turning the ball over. And we'll see if this pass rush can finally get Sam Darnold to make some more mistakes and potentially, increase that Packers, the turnovers the Packers have faced or forced so far this season. So now to my score prediction. At Lambeau Field, with Aaron Jones returning, I think it's going to be Jordan Love out there. I think it's going to be Packers win this game 27-24. I think it's going to be a very, very good game. I'm honestly super excited, especially after doing all this research, because there's just so many great matchups here that are going to be fun to see just sort of how it all pans out. But that's my prediction, 27 Packers, 24 Vikings. Stay tuned for my recap reaction video, which I'll do right after the game. Let me know your score prediction in the comment section down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at LukeBeller3 for some live tweets, my thoughts during the game, what's happening, all that kind of stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.